Hello everyone, welcome back to the Driple Studios channel. Today I'm going to be telling you how to make a platformer game in Scratch. Let's jump straight into it. So for this part, like the title says, we're going to be just covering like the basic, the movement and the win condition. We're not going to be doing anything fancy like animations just yet. However, later down in the series, we will be deciding how to do that. So to create the character, what we want to go ahead and do is just delete our sprite here. Are you sure we want to delete the sprite? Yes. And we just want to go down and choose paint. I'm going to be creating my own sprite. You guys don't have to if you don't want to, but I will be just for this tutorial. So as you can see here, I've just made a quick triangle. It's not the most perfect triangle I've ever created. However, for this tutorial, it will do, and I can always come back and edit it off screen later on. So once we've got our sprite costume made, we want to head over to the code, and the first thing we want to do is set its location. So what we're going to do is just go to motion, and we're going to go down to events, grab a when green flag clicked, and we want to go to looks and grab a go to front layer. This will just mean that it's always constantly at the front and nothing will be overlapping it. We then want to grab a show block and a go to block. So I'm just going to, for this purpose, I'm just going to set it to 0, 0, just so it's nice and centered on our screen. We're then going to grab a forever block and put that in. And for now, we're not going to put anything in the forever block just yet, because we're going to make the functionality in just a second. First of all, I'm then going to now create the level sprite. Now the reason why I'm going to do this now is just so we have a level to actually like test the sprite with, and we can test the player movement freely without having to create like little temporary things. We can just fully create the full-on level. So to do this, I'm going to firstly just quickly rename the sprite and call it player. We're going to go down to the bottom, we're going to choose, and we're going to click paint a sprite. We're now going to paint the level in this. So I've already made one, so I'm just going to drag that in. However, you have complete freedom on how to make your own. Right, so as you can see, I have the costume here. It's currently not centered. There we go. And I'm just going to whack that into 0, 0, like so. I'm unsure as to why it's not completely middle. Let me just have a look at that. Right, there we go. Sorry, it was just something that I had done earlier. That is my fault. So now we have the level sprite. I'm just going to rename this to level, and we're going to head back over to our player. We're then going to scale the size down to something maybe like 20, just so it's a bit smaller, something like that, so it can fit around everywhere, can fit around in all like the levels and stuff. I might shrink it even a bit more to 15, just so it can easily fit through all of the gaps that I have made. We're now going to choose a starting point, so I'm thinking maybe down here. Down here will be something good. You can pick whatever you want, it is up to you. So I'm going to go with 90 and minus 155. That's 55 on 155. There we go. And I'm also just going to set these over here to the same values. Smile 55 again. There we go. We're now going to start creating the actual functionality of the player, so we can move. And this movement system is, it does include quite a lot of maths, but I will talk through it and I will explain all of the maths and how it all works at the end once we've finished with it. So the first thing we want to do is go down to my blocks, and we are going to be making our own blocks just so it's more simple and we can see where things are easily without having to have a massive long bit of code which just looks messy and unorganized. If you haven't already, please do check out my previous Scratch video, 13 optimization tips in Scratch. We use quite a lot of them in this video and it's really beneficial and it will help you in your own projects. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get to making our movement. So the first thing we want to do is go to make a block. We want to click it, and we want to name this X engine, and we want to click add an input, and we're just going to call this X vel. It could be X velocity if you really want, but I'm just going to call it X vel just because it's short and simple. The next thing we want to do is just make sure run without screen refresh is enabled and it's ticked. This will just stop the whole movement system from completely breaking, and it will make it a lot smoother. Once we've done this, we just want to click OK, and this define X engine X velocity block should appear here. That's what you want. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to go down to motion and get move X by and drag out this X velocity from the here, and we just want to plug that in to that gap right there. We then want to go to control, grab a if then and a repeat until. Make sure the repeat until is underneath the if then, and then we want to get an if then else and put that in the repeat until. We then want to head to sensing, and we want to grab a touching, and then we want to grab another touching, but don't plug it in just yet. Then we head over to operators and grab a not, and then plug the second touching inside of there, and then put this not touching inside of the repeat until. Since we're still in the operators, we're going to just quickly grab a less than block and put that in the if then else. We then want to grab another X velocity and plug that in the top there, and just set this value to 0. We then want to grab two change X bys and just plug them in both of these if then gaps. So one in the if then gap and one in the else gap. We want to change the if then to 1 and the else to -1. This will handle the movement from left to right. And what we want to do is go over to the variables and just want to rename this my variable. We can just rename this to X velocity. So I've done X vel, so I've renamed it X velocity. If you've done it the other way around and gone X velocity, you want to make sure the variable is called X vel. This way you just don't get confused between the two. I know I didn't do a very good job at explaining that, but hopefully you understand the gist of what I'm trying to say. But once you've created this variable, you want to grab a set and we want to drag this into the if then. Make sure it's still set to 0, and now this is done. The X velocity, it looks quite complicated when you first look at it. However, I can promise you that it is not. All it's really doing is moving our sprite horizontally. It also checks to see if you've hit a wall, it will stop the speed, and it will back up pixel by pixel until you are no longer inside of the wall. We use it to allow smooth movement, prevent clipping into walls, and it includes precise collision detection. We're now going to be making the Y engine, so the Y velocity, which is the up and down counterpart to the left and right, which we already have. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go make a block, and we're just going to call this Y engine. We're going to grab an input, so just click add an input, and we're just going to call this Y vel, and we're going to tick run without screen refresh, and then we'll hit OK. Now another block here should appear, and in this block we want to do pretty much the same thing we've done with here, but the Y. So we're going to go to motion and grab a change Y by. We're then going to grab the Y vel block and put that inside here. And then we're going to head down to control and grab a repeat until. And we're then going to grab an if then else and put that inside of the repeat until. We then want to go down. Oh, I forgot, my bad, I forgot to set these. So what we want to do is go, instead of touching level, instead of touching mouse pointer, sorry, we want to click if touching level. And then the one inside of not, we also want to set to level. But what we want to do is just right click on the not and click duplicate. That should duplicate both of those, and we want to whack that into the repeat until. We then want to duplicate this block here, the less than, and we just want to put that into the if then else, but instead of the x velocity, just drag that into the library and get another y velocity. Inside of the if then, we then want to go to motion and grab a change y by, that's a change x, change y by -1, and we want to grab a new variable called can jump. Make sure it's not a cloud variable. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to hide it, and then we're going to set can jump to yes. Inside of the else, we want to grab a change y by, and we're just going to change this to -1. And oh, sorry, my bad. Instead of this being a -1, we want to change it to a 1. And then we want to go to set we want to create a new variable called y velocity. Click OK. And we want to set y velocity to 0. Now, both of these are done, and now we can make the actual engine. Now, the actual engine is quite long. However, it's only long because we want it to handle all of the movement in one. So we've made these X engines and Y engines just to make it even shorter and as short as we possibly can. So to make the platformer engine, all we're going to do is make a block. I'm just going to call this platformer engine. Now we don't need any of these, but we need to make sure that it is run without screen refresh. We're going to click OK. I'm just going to drag this one down here. I am going to drag this and just pop that into the forever block, since the platformer engine will handle all of the movement. And now so begins the programming of the platformer engine. So what we want to do is grab two if-thens, missed it, like so, and we want to go to sensing, get key pressed, drag two of those in there, and instead of space for the first one, I'm going to select A, and instead of space for the second one, I'm going to click D. This means if I click A, my player will move left, and D, when I want my player to move right. You can change these to whatever keys you want. So if you want the left arrow, you can select the left arrow, and instead of D, if you want the right arrow, just select right arrow, and everything will be all good. Then we want to head over to the variables tab and click and grab two change variable by blocks. And for the A, we want to make sure it's X velocity, and for the right one, we want to also do X velocity. And instead of 1 here, we're going to do 1.5 and negative 1.5, sorry. And for the D, we want 1.5. These values can be whatever you want, and it's just how much your sprite will move when you click either the left key or the right key. We then want to grab a and we want to set the X velocity to, and this is where it can get a little bit complicated. So we want to go to operators, grab a multiply by, pop that in the set, and we want to do 0.8, and we want to times it by the X velocity. So what this will do is reduce, it will almost create friction. So it will gradually and slowly reduce the amount of movement, so it creates smooth movement instead of the player just stopping instantly. The player will slowly stop and kind of almost slide a little bit before stopping. If you don't want that, you can just remove it, and you can set the X velocity to 0. But if you want friction, you change it to a lower number, and if you want more friction, you change it to a higher number. I don't suggest going anything over 0.9 recurring, just because if you have anything more than 1, if you have 1 or more, your player will never stop. But if you want ice, this will help a lot. But I'm just going to leave it at 0.8 just for this example. What we then want to do is go over to control and grab another if-then block. I'm going to pop that down there. And then we want to go to operators once again. We then want to grab a greater than and pop that inside of there, and grab a ABS and pop that inside of there. We then want to change this 50 to 0.9. And instead of this blank spot here, we want to get the X velocity. So I'm just going to right click this and pop that in there. We then want to go to My Blocks and grab X Engine. And we want to go to Operators and find the round block, pop that in there, and then get another X velocity and pop that in there. So this will then call this. And instead of having X velocity just be this, it will be the rounded value of the X velocity variable. So will this value here. So that is the X velocity done. Let's now move on to the Y velocity. So what we want to do is go to Control and grab a if then block. We then want to grab another if then block and pop that on the inside. And then we want to go to sensing and grab a key space pressed. I'm going to leave this as space because this is what the jump key is. So whatever you want, whether it be a up arrow or W, whatever you want your jump key to be, you can pop that in here. And then inside of the if then here, we want to grab a operators and we want to grab a equal to. We then want to go to variables and grab can jump and change the 50 to yes and pop that inside of there. We then want to grab two set variables and we want to set can jump to no, and we want to set y velocity to 16. This will just be how high you want your player to jump. So I found that I really like the value 16. If you want to jump higher, you change this to something higher than 16, like 20 for example. If you want to jump lower, then you change it to 14 or something like that. But I'm just going to stick with 16. Under these two if then statements, we want to go to Control and grab another if then, but instead of if then, we want to grab an if then else, pop that under there, and we want to go to operators and grab a less than. So this value here will be minus 20, and we want to, this value here, we want to grab my variable and grab a y velocity. So if y velocity is greater than minus 20, or if minus 20 is less than y velocity, we want to change the y velocity by minus 2. This will be our slowly decrease of the momentum we have when jumping. And then inside the else, we want to change y velocity by minus 20. This will be the gravity. And then lastly, below it all, y engine, y velocity. So this bit down here handles our jumping and gravity by using the y engine, which checks to see if we're clipping in walls. If we are, it will bump us back up, so we're not clipping in walls. And it also handles if we can jump. So if the player is in the air and not touching the ground, then we will not be able to jump, because we don't want to be able to just jump infinitely when we are in the air. So if we click play, as you can see, our movement now works and it looks very, very smooth. We can jump around all around the level. Level is quite tedious to set up because obviously you need to make sure you can reach every single jump. For example, I can't reach that jump there, but there are workarounds. It's kind of like a puzzle game, and if you want a puzzle game, then create your level how you want. Speaking of in the level, if we go over to our level, we have some code to implement into here. It's not a lot and it is very simple. So what we need to do is just go to events, grab a when green flag clicked, go to looks, go to switch backdrop to backdrop 1. I'm just going to quickly rename that to base. And then if we go here, switch backdrop to base, and I'm going to go to the center of the screen. I'm also going to grab a show block just so the level is 100% guaranteed to show when we start the game. And with that, that is all of the basic movement that we need to fully start our platform. Next episode, we will be looking how to create obstacles and create both a win and lose condition. If you guys have enjoyed, please do leave a like and subscribe. If you found it helpful, please tell me in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next part. Goodbye.